Hey everybody, it's me, John Cassidy, and I'm joined today by Mr. Sam Webb. He's the head of RPGs for Modiphius, and if you're not familiar with the Modiphius, they do all kinds of great stuff. They're well known for anything from the Mutant Chronicle RPG series to the new Wasteland Warfare for Fallout. And Sam, welcome, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Great, great. So I want to bring you on today to talk all about Star Trek Adventures and in other RPG products that Modiphius is doing. So if you could, you could give us a little introduction on yourself and how you got into tabletop gaming.
Sure. I got into tabletop gaming about 10 years ago. I was training as a theatre director at drama school, and I wanted to do stuff on interactive performances. And then a friend of mine went, "Well, have you gone to LARP and role playing?" And I was like, "No." I'd done a bit of tabletop gaming in the past with stuff like Warhammer 40k, but then got introduced to D&D, obviously, the lower days of 4th edition, which we started off in, and then we just started playing lots of different other tabletop games as we went along. Went to a few clubs in London, like role-playing clubs that meet up on a kind of Wednesday evening. Was playing through that, and then a friend of mine was working for Modiphius and said, "Well, how about Chris Birch is the publishing director, is looking for an assistant. Why don't you interview for the part?" And I kind of did, and he liked me enough to employ me, which was all cool. And then I've managed to work my way to the lofty heights of managing the RPG lines, which is really cool.
Nice. So what was the first RPG that you were involved with?
Directly, it was Star Trek Adventures, actually.
Nice. So Star
Yeah.
Trek Adventures, if you can give us a quick rundown on that, and then how you started that whole development process.
So I started just by assisting the then line manager, Dave Chapman, who is here in the UK as well. He was working outside the office and was just kind of working as the lead writer in terms of organising some of the other writers and kind of basically putting into practice what Chris's kind of director vision was for the line. And then a few months in, I was taking on more and more work and responsibility, and it's at that point that Dave had to bow out, unfortunately. But I kind of said to Chris, "Well, you realise that I've been kind of doing this work now for a couple of months, right? Like, in addition to all the normal stuff I do, can I just do this? Can I manage Star Trek?" And he was like, "Well, sure, so long it doesn't interfere with your other stuff." And then slowly but surely that, Star Trek became all my other stuff. So I kind of worked my way into that, really.
Did you always consider yourself a big Trekkie?
Yeah, I have been for years. I started watching The Next Generation with my dad, and I was so little at the time that we would squeeze into the same little armchair together and watch Captain Picard and Worf and everyone else, go exploring and diplomatizing across the galaxy.
Nice. What was your favorite character in that?
Oh God,
I know, tough questions, right?
it is, man, it is. Because they're all so unique and they've all got awesome little things to them.
When I was a kid, it was Wesley Crusher, which I grew out of. But man, as a kid, you're like, oh, I could be Wesley Crusher. That'd be amazing.
And do you know what? I think people forget that. I think Wesley fulfilled quite a bit of that for a younger audience at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's quite a bit of bashing goes on nowadays. And if you look back, some of the kind of script writing and the dynamics, they're not quite as good as you might remember.
I mean, they started off, what's her name is like a total mind reader, and they very quickly were like, we kind of now have to make you into sort of a feeling person. So now then she just started feeling stuff, because she could just read everyone's minds and be like, oh, they're being mischievous, like,
Yeah, I know. It's like, didn't get that at all. Cross the hail, no. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I like Riker's bravado as a kid, and I liked Geordi and Data's friendship. That was a really strong point as well, I think.
And his cat, Data's cat.
Yeah.
Always great. So in terms of bringing that energy and that feeling of Star Trek, how did you go into creating the RPG from that?
Yeah, well, Chris's vision was always first and foremost that you're Starfleet officers
Mm-hmm.
from the Federation. And I know that other systems in the past have gone kind of more to the realms of you can play anything from a Cardassian in, exploring the Gamma Quadrant to a Klingon on the outer fringes of the, explored Beta Quadrant, not having anything to do with the Federation.
Mm-hmm.
But we focused it very much on Starfleet as its kind of default form because we thought that was very important to the feeling of Trek and all the series, the TV shows and stuff particularly. And it's obviously always from that point of view. But it also makes for an interesting game because at that point you feel much more obliged to almost kind of everyone's the paladin in a way because you're all out there. The modus operandi, the objective is exploration and discovery. It's not a goblin bothering dungeon where you kind of have to get to the end and loot the corpse of everyone that gets in your way. I can't imagine a Federation away team beaming down and then just mowing their way through a cave system. Like they turn up and then be trying to diplomatically deal with whatever the problem was. And so that very much was the focus from the get-go in terms of rules development. Nathan Dowdle is our full-time rules developer for all of our 2D20 system stuff. So it was great because he basically watched the entire of the every series that they produced, including the animated series.
Oh, that's rough.
As research, he was watching it while he was writing it, and it was so that ethos has really come from a knowledge of the source material, and has gone to the very core of the rule system. So we have stuff where with the extended task stuff, it's like, imagine the problem has hit points and you're working away at it and you need breakthroughs and you need to find out what's going on and then act on that information. It's much more about that rather than trying to get to the next encounter, get through the next room, and kind of blast your way through the adventure.
Yeah, I was reading through the rule book, and that's the one thing that really stood out to me, is that a lot of the tasks are not straight up encounter type things. Like there's one, I think it basically, like, you can improve systems on the ship or you can do scientific breakthroughs, and you actually included the entire scientific process in the rulebook. It's really cool.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that little bit, and it started off as a part of the book that John Sneed wrote. It was an external writer who freelances for us, and he was doing a bit on that section, and then someone picked it up and did a bit on the section you're talking about is Zen and the Art of Warp Core Maintenance.
Yes.
As a nice little parody of that motorcycle title. And that just epitomized it for me. It's like, and I've used the scientific method a couple of times in my own home games. Like, it's just so cool to use that you observe something and you don't know what's going on. So then your players put across hypotheses of what that could be, and they relate that to the skills and the focuses their characters have got. And then if they're right, then you can proceed down that path. If they're wrong, then they do a little bit of research and you go, oh, that's not quite the right thing. You think it's maybe more of this kind of thing. And as you accumulate these breakthroughs, and you need a number of them before you've solved the problem, then you get more information, and you feel like you're building up to a real discovery. And it's just a great piece of the writing and rules work.
That's really cool. So when you were developing the scope, I mean, Star Trek is a massive universe. How did you decide on time periods, gameplay, etc.?
Well, by the time I'd come in, Chris very much, I think, working in conjunction with a couple of people, for kind of externally possibly, had worked out that 2371 was basically a good year.
And for people who don't know, that's like right before the Dominion War starts. It's like season 3 and 4 of DS9.
It's between seasons 3 and 4 of DS9, or it's kind of straddles the end of 3, I think, and the beginning of 4 possibly. There's going to be some Star Trek fans who are probably going to correct me right now. But there's that. Voyager starts, so Voyager goes missing in that year as well. And you've got this. It's basically the discovery of the Dominion is in that year, and then later on, towards maybe the very end of that year, Cisco gets promoted to captain. Not only that, but the film Generations happens, and so the Enterprise D gets destroyed. And so we have that as a kind of interesting tidbit for GMs and players. Say, well, if if the Federation flagship is basically not around right now, so there is a hole that needs to be filled. And so if you really wanted to play that kind of, we are the flagship, we're out there, we're the ones really exploring and discovering and having to help people in distress and encounter new civilizations and stuff, then you can be them, because the kind of tagline I remember as I came in was Starfleet needs a new crew. And that kind of came about from the Enterprise being destroyed at the end of the film in that year. So, you know, there's a lot going on, and it primes you for adventure, I think, out in the Star Trek universe.
Yeah, I mean, you can take it in so many directions at that point, because in the history of that point, like the Dominion War, you could play it as starting the Dominion War, and then you could play like a battle-heavy game.
Yeah,
lots of, like, they have the whole asteroid in Deep Space Nine where they're like besieged by Dominion forces. You could play a sort of a besieged force, all kinds of cool stuff. In the terms of the combat system, can you tell us a little bit about how 2D20 works?
Yeah, so the interesting thing, probably first and foremost, is that the initiative system is very simple. The GM basically decides needs a good reason for themselves to go first in their NPCs. If not, then they just let the players decide who wants to take the first turn, and then that player hands off to the GM, who gets to then decide which of their NPCs goes next, and then just hands play back. So you just alternate between the two until everyone's taken a turn. And then we have, I guess, like most kind of systems, generally speaking, we have actions that are broken down into kind of minor actions, which are short things like a bit of movement or picking up and drawing a weapon or something like that, to major actions or tasks, which we call them in Star Trek Adventures, which are basically anything that requires a roll. So from first aid to firing a phaser to you know, tinkering with something if you need to in combat as well. There's that. Everyone has a stress track, which essentially gets filled up as you take damage or stress is inflicted on you. If 5 stress is inflicted on you at once, or if you fill up your track from an attack, then you're kind of out from the count, as it were. What you can do, because that didn't feel, you know, quite Star Trek, that is maybe a little bit gritty in terms of, you know, if you kind of hit, you know, if you're full up track, or if you take 5 damage at once, then you know, that's it for you. Whereas this was more about kind of dodging phaser fire, having a second chance. So with the meta currency that we have in 2D20 called momentum, what you can do is spend 2 momentum to basically ignore the injury. So you've just dodged out of the way at the last second.
Nice.
Which feels a bit more cinematic.
How does momentum work in general?
So basically, for the 2D20 system, it's a roll under system, which is kind of, you know, the opposite end from kind of D&Ds and stuff like that. So what you do is basically you make up a target number from a couple of stats on your character sheet. So you'll have attributes and disciplines. And disciplines are like your skills, and they cover the 6 departments of Starfleet. And then attributes are you kind of more natural attributes like control, daring. There's fitness, there's insight, presence, and reason. I mean, remember them all.
Nice. Good.
There we go, yeah. And so you have those, and you add those 2 numbers together. So say you're trying to fire a phaser, you've got control of, say, 10, and you've got security of, say, 2. So you're looking to get a 12 or under on each D20 you roll.
Okay.
By default, you roll 2 D20s, and then you roll those. And then the GM they basically assign this task a difficulty, and that's how many successes you need.
Interesting.
So it might be, yeah. So it might be that you only needed 1 success, but you got 2. So those extra successes become this meta currency called momentum, and with that you can either improve the success that you've just done, going to improve upon it. You can get more information out of the GM by that kind of thing, or you can bank it for later and then use it for a more kind of immediate spend. Like if you want to buy more dice, and you can buy up to 3 dice to roll a total of 5 at once if you wanted to.
Interesting.
Because the difficulty can go kind of upwards of 6 or 7 if in real kind of dire circumstances.
Right, or like
so
tense diplomatic situations.
Yeah, like you've really put your foot in it before and things are going really badly and you really need to pull this one out of the bag. And it's a great mechanical way to build tension at a table immediately, because you can say, oh, okay, this is going to be difficulty 4. And then suddenly people are going around the table going, oh my God, I'm going to really have to pull this out of the bag. You know, what can I do? Can I grab, you know, a couple more dice? We've got enough momentum for that. Awesome. Okay, cool. And then kind of explaining how they're really putting a lot more effort into, you know, the kind of manners and stuff like that. It's, you know, really, really cool little system.
Nice. So, in terms of the structure of a general play session, things are broken down into, I guess, scenes, and then the larger part of that is basically like the episode, basically.
Yeah, so if you imagine what we call our missions are basically like, kind of either an episode or like a two-parter.
Hmm.
All the published adventures so far, they're all written in 4 acts, basically, which kind of suits the TV style of play. So, things are scenes, and scenes can be fairly intuitive or common sense to people. Once you go to a location because something is happening, once that's happened or has been resolved, then we move on to the next scene.
Mm.
And basically, a combat encounter is like a scene. And the other interesting pacing mechanism with that is that any momentum you've saved up, you decrease by 1 at the end of the scene. So it takes because momentum, it doesn't always just kind of tick along. If you think about it, kind of almost kind of dramatically or literally.
You've got to maintain the momentum.
You do, yeah, exactly. So if you've got up to 6 banked, which is your maximum,
Okay.
you drop down to 5 in the beginning of the next scene.
Gotcha. Now, how long does a scene, like 15, 20 minutes typically?
It can be. It can really depend on
Right.
on the GM and the situation. I find that, say, in a 3-hour game, that if you need to take about half an hour on a scene,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine. Combat doesn't usually last that long either, so probably about 45 minutes if you really drill down to, like, everyone's involved, you've got a whole army of Klingons to kind of, defend against.
Right. So actually, the combat in terms of the spacing. So you built this more towards, from what I've read, more towards the pen and paper side.
Definitely, yeah. We have a line of miniatures, which does help, because I always find that miniatures are great for just figuring out positioning and everything like that when you want to be a bit more careful about where everything is. We've got a couple of floor tile products as well for that, which basically you get to map out either a Federation starship or a kind of Klingon starship or base.
Heck yes.
So they're 2 of the tile sets, and they were designed by a great guy, Jose Esteras, who has worked on a few of our tile sets as a kind of digital artist before. But they were also designed in conjunction with Rick Sternbach, who Trekkies might recognise as the kind of set designer for Next Gen.
That's amazing.
Has consulted a lot on DS9 and Voyager.
Wow.
So he did a lot of work with us on exactly what stuff looked like, and also kind of adapted that a little bit so that it had a bit more functionality. There are a few more doors in there than actually would be on the set and stuff, just so you can move around a bit more. It's a bit more interesting.
Right.
But yeah, what we do is in combat we use zones instead of specific squares of movement or anything like that. And zones are basically kind of you can also use the theatre of the mind for this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So what you're really looking at is reach is within arm's length, so you can able to touch and reach or hit somebody. And then close range is quite depending on the kind of size of the room. It might just be a kind of 6x6 area. It might be bigger than that, depending on the kind of terrain in general or the map. And then it just goes to medium to long and extreme. And you can move up to anywhere within medium range, so you can move into the next zone, basically.
Okay.
Because reach is more like a state of being rather than in a zone. So anything within close is effectively in the same zone as you.
Gotcha. So if I were picturing that, let's take the bridge of the Enterprise D. How many zones would be in that?
So I believe if you include the actual meeting room in the back, mm-hmm. We've got about 4 or 5 zones in there.
Okay, cool.
Depending on kind of how you're dividing it up. On the floor tiles specifically, it's probably about that number. Mm-hmm. So basically, your standard, front room, kind of living room, or dining room would be a zone basically.
Great, nice. Okay. Now there are different divisions in Star Trek. There's 3 of them, I believe. Can you go into detail on that?
Yeah. So there's the for the next generation amongst us. There's the red uniforms, which signify command and con. So that's the command division. And then we have the operations division, which is engineering and security. You also have the kind of operations officers, a bit like data, who kind of look after the kind of day-to-day running of the ship and kind of stuff like that, coordinate with engineering and security, but aren't necessarily part of those 2 departments. And then within the sciences division, you've got the medical department and the sciences department that deal with scientific discovery and actually specialize in certain fields. A bit like Spock and other scientists that you see on various starships. And each of those that we've done as a source book, so they're covered quite extensively the different divisions, broken down into 2 departments, and that in essence mirrors our kind of skill set, because we have 6 disciplines on the character sheet, which is command con, security and engineering, and then sciences and medicine.
Gotcha. Oh, okay.
Target numbers from.
Nice.
So the command book is already out and available now from all good friendly local game stores. And then the operations division book is on pre-order at the moment, so you can pre-order that from local stores, and then also from our website as well. Modiphius.net is our web store. And then that's going to be delivered in November to pre-order customers, very early in November, and then it will go straight into stores a couple of weeks after.
Nice. Now, what did these supplements do outside of the normal rule book? So what do they go into detail on?
So the Command Division book is really our Starship book. So it has a whole chapter on classes that weren't covered in the core book from different eras as well. So we've got the NX class in there from Enterprise, and then we've got a myriad of other classes from the various TV series and films. And then it also has kind of fleet combat as well. So if you want to actually take a kind of step up, be an admiral, have a kind of a staff that you work over, and actually have kind of big, larger fleet engagements where it's a number of ships as opposed to you just commanding your starship. We've got that in there too, as well as your kind of regular extensive NPCs, more character options with different talents and stuff like that. And then the operations division book, it contains our red alert miniatures rules, which is more like if you want to have a bit more of a kind of skirmish game feel, or say you and I are the only 2 people that have shown up to the session. It's like, cool. Well, you take the Klingons, I'll take the Federation, I'll defend the bridge of the Enterprise, and we'll have a good kind of game from that.
Oh, cool. Okay, is that utilizing the miniatures a little more heavily? Yeah,
definitely, and the tile sets too. So they're more or less required to play. And then basically that was adapted from the kind of core rules, the core combat rules from the 2D20 system. So it uses the same stats and the same dice and stuff. There's just a little bit of an adaptation in terms of you can basically take squads now, which act as a single unit, and you get to roll more dice for. And it's just a bit more streamlined for more of a kind of war game feel.
Gotcha. So in terms of character building, the game basically has main characters and backup characters. So how does that work in terms of gameplay? So if I have a main character, you might be on the bridge, you might be the captain, and then one of the other main characters that I don't know, my friend Tom might be playing as an engineering guy, so he wouldn't necessarily be on the bridge at the same time. How does all that work together?
Yeah, I mean, that's perfectly kind of the problem or the situation you might find when it doesn't really feel right to send the captain down on the away mission and have the ship completely deserted, or the kind of the C team kind of covering the bridge. So what you do is you can spend crew support, which is a unit of currency for the starships, and then what you can do is introduce supporting characters. And what's fun about that is that you basically get to kind of make a very quick. I'd describe them as like a kind of half-player character.
Okay.
They've got comparable stats, but they've got a few less talents and focuses and stuff like that to begin with. And then what you can do is, if you figure out that, you're introducing your first officer again and again because they're the one going on the away mission whilst you as the captain are staying up with some of the player characters on the bridge, you can actually start developing them. So when you introduce them again, you get to add a talent to them, or you get to add a value to them, or you get to add determination to them. So you get to add little bits of the actual player character rules to them. But by the end of it, you've actually developed more or less what is a player character comparable to you. And hopefully by that time, you've also developed a bit of a character, a bit of a backstory to them too. So they feel part of the experience as well. It's a bit like your Reginald Barclays and stuff from the show. Those kind of returning, secondary characters that come along from the show.
Oh, what's the lady from the original, the medical, from the original series?
Nurse Chapel.
Yes, kind of like her.
Yeah, exactly. So they might not appear in every adventure or every mission, but you come to know them as well. And we had a petty officer, Simmons, I think, was the security guy. I don't think he's copped it yet, thankfully. I think he's still.
But he's wearing a red shirt.
No, no,
No, no,
gold.
they're
Because we're
yellow now, right?
2321. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's great. So in terms of character development, this uses a milestone system.
Yeah, yeah. So what it does essentially is rather than it be a kind of zero to hero progression, what you're doing is more about like the characters do in the TV show. They learn and they grow. So actually, you're rephrasing their values, which are their kind of core beliefs, and they have a bit of a mechanical impact. Or you're moving a point from science to con because actually you don't want so much science, but actually in this episode we just had, I suddenly had to take control of the shuttle and I had to fly us back into the shuttle bay. So you can move stuff around rather than as a kind of main back and forth of the character progression. And then you get arc milestones are the largest, and think you get spotlight milestones as well. So you can actually start adding things to your character sheet. So instead of just having 6 focuses, you could maybe end up with 7 or 8,
Ooh,
or
okay.
you could actually increase some attributes without having to kind of borrow the points from elsewhere. So it really does try and kind of mirror the serialization of a TV show in that sense.
Right, because these changes are representative of what a human would experience throughout their life, not necessarily like in D&D you level up to 20 and you're like a demigod almost.
Yeah,
I think
you're
in D&D like
chosen by the so-and-so.
25 ends up being close to what a demigod is or something like that. And you can
Sure.
literally like cause earthquakes and whatnot, but in this you're still a human being, maybe a little bit
Exactly.
different.
Yeah, yeah. And that was the thing as well, was with Starfleet officers, they're already kind of the best of the best because of the academy and the selection process.
Right, right.
So it's not like they're going to go through a ton of learning on the job. And not so much like the supporting characters anyway. So, you're already great at what you do because you're a main character, or you're on the bridge of this ship. So, Nathan really needs a different way of handling how to progress a character, and it was more about the actual character themselves rather than about getting new abilities and being able to do more, because you can already do it.
That's so cool. So in this system, because we're playing as Federation, there's sort of a morality system in place where you get either commendations or punishments for actions that you take on the field, actions, diplomacy, etc. So if you're going in and causing violence and shooting things up, you actually get punished by Starfleet. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. I mean, that comes out in a meta currency called Threat, which is basically the GM's momentum. And they start off with some of that at the beginning of the session, depending on how many players are there. But they can acquire more of it. So say if you wanted to use a momentum spend that you didn't have the currency for, you didn't have any momentum saved up or anything, then you could always give the GM some threat instead. So you could still do the thing you wanted to do in terms of mechanics. But that also comes across when you're doing some dangerous things. So say you want to fire some torpedoes at somebody. That's not, I mean, whilst it might be Starfleet protocol or something, it automatically kind of escalates the situation.
Okay.
Same thing when you're trying to buy equipment that, if it really has hit the fan and, you need to whip out those phaser rifles, then each one of those phaser rifles is going to cost you a threat because it escalates the situation in terms of the drama and the situation. So, and also if you do a lethal attack, so instead of setting phasers to stun, you set them to kill. Again, that's kind of an increase in threat, and that's actually received by the GM as this currency. So, the game really encourages you, probably discourages you actually, from not playing kind of by Starfleet protocol, for you to actually do the right thing, seek out the right solution to the problem that you're facing.
Right, because I mean the whole idea being you're looking to expand the Federation peacefully if at all possible, which makes it very interesting to play in the Dominion War, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our Gamma Quadrant sourcebook, as we're doing the different sourcebooks by quadrant for the different kind of settings. So we came up with the Beta Quadrant one first, and that covers the Klingons and the Romulans as much as the Federation in the Beta Quadrant. When it comes around to the Gamma Quadrant sourcebook, that's actually going to be centered on the Dominion War, in as much as it is going to be talking about the actual Gamma Quadrant and what we know of it itself. So there'll probably be more rules in there for kind of dealing with that and having to deal with a kind of wartime situation and how that impacts on threat. Because obviously if you're, you know, coming up against various Dominion kind of fighters or something, and, you know, they're only, you have to deal with, you know, torpedoes and, you know, firing to kill potentially, then how does that impact on the game? And is the GM just going to like get this exponential amount of threat to be able to spend on it? You know, or is it going to be a bit more kind of lax? Is there a directive maybe from Starfleet that enables them to, you know, shoot to kill instead when it comes to Jem'Hadar or something like that?
Oh, that's great. There's so much possibility with this universe. You're planning, I mean, I don't want you to talk too much about what you have in the pipeline that you haven't announced, but planning on future things beyond the command division and the division materials and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our starter set's coming out in November for a Christmas release.
Okay, what's that?
So that is basically, you know, your kind of D&D Red Box or Pathfinder Starter Set, Edge of the Empires, so Fantasy Flight Star Wars starter set as well. It's going to be the same thing. So it's a $30 box, and basically that contains everything you need to just kick off a little campaign, have a try of Star Trek Adventures, and if you like it, you can go on to buy the core book, and there's even a voucher in there for a bit of a discount.
Oh, nice.
So that contains kind of a quick start rule book, which basically gives you the basics of what you need to know, including a bit of starship combat. Gives you some pre-generated characters, and then it has a little adventure campaign kind of thing for 3 adventures over a little campaign written by a wonderful writer who writes some of our adventure material and other books, Marco Rafala. And he's done for us what is a brilliant little campaign that starts by teaching you how to play the game in kind of, you know, mission 1, and then by mission 3 you're in this like big conspiracy and everything's going on. You're trying to find out what's going on and how to deal with it. And it was written specifically for the starter set, so you'll only also be able to get that either in the starter set or by buying it as a PDF. So even for the kind of collectors out there who are trying to get everything or who want a bit more adventure material, it's also well worth it because you get some, you know, some dice in that box, you get some tokens. Like I said, you get the pre-gens as well. You get some fold-out maps for the adventures. So it really is value for money in that sense.
Oh, that's amazing. Can you tell us a little about the living campaign you did or doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So for free, we developed a living campaign, which is essentially a series of missions that will impact each other as you play, as you make decisions about those missions. And really, I'm really thankful for the community to be so patient with us, because in that sense, what that means is as soon as you've put a mission out there to the public, given them a few weeks to play it, you're then asking for feedback on what they did, and then you're having to write the next mission with that in mind, or you're having to adapt the mission that you've got in a draft form so that it actually is informed by the decisions they make. So we're actually coming to the close of season 1, which is a kind of big finale with a really lovely little Easter egg to the core rulebook, if anyone can spot it. And it's the culmination of the plot so far about what's happened. And I won't really kind of go into details to kind of spoil it, but it's the actual kind of revealment of the discovery of various kind of little interconnected things with what you've been seeing out there in what we've created as the Shackleton Expanse, which is a little area of space, quite a big area of space if you look at the map, that we've kind of carved out for ourselves. And CBS have said, sure, you play in that playground, you crack on.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we've been able to kind of create this big area in space, give it some various anomalies that the players have started by looking into. And now some of that is actually going to become just a bit more understandable in terms of the reasons why those anomalies are there and the alien life that is out there too.
Hey, the rulebook is jam-packed with information from planets. It's got all the T-class planets like M-class, K-class. It's got stars and luminosity charts. And it's got anomalies, nebulae. Nebulae? Is that right?
I guess.
I think so. Yeah, nebulae. It's got all the scientific stuff that you would want to, if you want to, as a game master, like create an area like that. But having that living campaign stuff is absolutely cool. Wasn't the first one Abyss Station?
I believe so. We started off, actually, we even started the living campaign during the playtesting.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Some of the playtest missions were actually set in that. You know, a couple were that just kind of, you know, your weekly mission that doesn't necessarily tie into everything in the larger plot, but then there were a couple that did in very subtle ways. So all of that took place in the Shackleton Expanse and technically in the living campaign. So actually, it was even as the rules were being finalised, we were already kind of playing in that playground, which was quite cool. So I believe Abyss Station was one of the first. I honestly can't remember what the first mission was now.
Gotcha. I know I've read the Abyss Station one for sure. I think it's like 2269 or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. There's a really nice one that's kind of a bit of a kind of turning point in the campaign called Signals, which is my go-to. It was by a great writer who's worked on quite a bit of vampire stuff as well, Ian Lemke. I just go to that whenever someone's just like, oh, will you run Star Trek for these people? You go to this convention or whatever, and I'm just like, yeah, I'll crack out Signals. I know it really well now, and it's a really great adventure. The pacing's really cool, and it builds up to a nice climax. It also feeds into the living campaign.
Nice.
And that was actually the adventure that you get in the Quick Start Guide as well, which is that is available.
Still with me?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, my router's it's been acting up like crazy.
That's all right.
All right. Cool. I think we're okay now. I think we're back. Sorry. Cut off right after talking about Abyss Station. I was going to ask you about These Are the Voyages, the supplement.
Sure. Well, that is just the adventure book that we had written, and it's various different writers went in for that. As I say, Marco was one of them. I believe Ian was on the Living campaign, and we had Fred Love, who's done a bit for Decipher and stuff in the old Star Trek books as well for the previous editions of the game. So we've had quite a few other kind of regulars come back as well, which is very cool. And that adventure book basically gives you, I believe, 8 missions is the first book. And that will give you, you know, various different missions you can run pretty much in any time period. And it will give you some really cool little things just to start off with. Or you could run, you know, all 8 missions and have a fantastic campaign, and that could be that. So there are more on the way of those, which is cool. We haven't confirmed that really or properly announced it yet, but there are more mission compendiums on the way. So the first one we called These Are the Voyages, and then the others will actually use some of the rest of that speech to kind of you know, theme them properly, which is pretty cool.
Oh, neat. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. I was going to ask you about your favorite story during a session. What's the favorite thing that one of the players has done very much in line with what Star Trek is that you've experienced?
Oh, man.
I know, right? Quite a question.
Yeah. There was a brilliant bit in I was running for the Roleplay Haven here in London. They have various branches around. I was in Archway, and I was running Star Trek Adventures as one of their opening nights for the club. And I had, obviously, a table of fairly random people, didn't really know each other that much. We were building up to the climax of the thing. And there's this bit where they're having to deal with some very alien technology, and they're kind of having to manipulate it very carefully and stuff like that. And pretty much for most of the session, I think my medical officer hadn't chimed in very much, or, you know, you can get that feeling as like the healer of the party. You're not really there for anything other than a band-aid and try to help the other people. And that's all they're kind of there for. But they turned to me and they went, what we're having to do here, it's very much like surgery, isn't it? And I was like, yes, it is. You're now in charge of this thing. You have to do all of this.
Oh my gosh! What?
Kind of a central part of that you know, the climax of that adventure, which was really, really cool. I also loved putting together to kind of mirror the episodes as we were playing at home, as we went along through the kind of the star dates of the campaign through into the later years, like 72 and 73. I actually did some more stuff that was kind of gearing towards, like, you know, the changeling infiltration and stuff like that.
Yes.
So I actually did it where Narendra Station, which is our kind of, you know, castle on the frontier in terms of the Shackleton Expanse, that's the only star base that's kind of on the edge of this area of space. There was a changeling infiltration of that, and I had the crew basically with, you know, the crew of the star base have to sweep the floors for this changeling. So they were working their way up and down, and I've structured that, as I said, like a bit like that extended task thing, where if you imagine it's kind of got hit points and breakthroughs. So every time there was a breakthrough, they'd sealed off one, you know, several decks of the star base, and they were working their way through. And at the same time as the changeling, I was rolling my own extended task, and I was trying to beat their breakthroughs, so do it quicker than them.
Interesting. Okay.
It was a big kind of point spend off in terms of threat and momentum at that point.
Right. That's pretty cool. I like those kind of opposed tasks.
Yeah, it just gives you as a GM something to do as well. Like, you feel like, even though you're not necessarily describing it to the players, you've got your own plot. You know that the changeling isn't quite made it through the ventilation shaft yet, and actually they're about to get to it. And so you've got all that going on behind the scenes. And I think that just kind of, better informs the drama and the scenes you're describing, because you've got that kind of given circumstance in your head, and you're not having to just kind of invent stuff as it, on the fly as it is. You've got a structure and you've got a backstory to go off, which is really cool. I really enjoyed that.
That's amazing. One of our live stream commenters asks, when will we see Ferengi as a playable race?
So you may have seen that there is the Next Generation and there is the original series player character PDFs. There is about to be the Deep Space Nine PDF go live. And in that is Quark, and he is, so that very weirdly, Quark, there we go. And he's started up as a player character, but not only that, is over Leaf, you've then got Ferengi as the species options. So you'll actually be able to play Ferengi as a playable race if you get the PDF.
That's going to be awesome.
I believe we are including it in the Alpha Quadrant supplement, which will be out next year. And I believe we're commissioning Nog as the character art for that, because he was the first Ferengi in stuff.
Yes,
so
yeah.
Like, well, why not do that?
No, that's very cool. Ferengi in Deep Space Nine is what, because in TNG they're introduced as like this. They wanted to make them this kind of overarching villains, but it really didn't turn out well. People didn't really catch on to that.
Goblins.
Yeah.
Space goblins.
Big-eared space goblins. And so
no, I loved the treatment they got in Deep Space Nine. It was a lot better. I mean, I kind of give away there that it's my favourite of the shows, particularly the later series. But actually, some of the development on that, and also the kind of the progression the civilization took, almost in terms of when you started getting women's rights in the in the Ferengi alliance, and then. You had all those different characters and how Quark and Ram and people were all involved in that, and then ultimately what happened with the Grand Nagus. It was all really cool.
And things like their time traveling adventure back to Roswell, and they end up being the Roswell aliens.
Yeah, I know. It's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. I think playing as, I mean, I know it's meant to be a Federation kind of game, but playing as a bunch of Ferengi freelancers, I think would be hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the thing really with Star Trek Adventures. We don't necessarily we don't have to confine it just to the Federation. It's built in terms of the departments, sure, in terms of the rules, but I think with as more and more playable races come out through the various books and through the various PDFs, I think people will be at liberty to run with those kind of cool campaigns that they've got in their head. People always going on about this a Klingon campaign, or they want to play I want to play some Cardassian freelancers, and you're like, sure, why not? I mean, the core book is pretty much pitched at a Starfleet, a group of player characters, but there's nothing really stopping you, as we included some of the alien races in terms of their kind of baseline attribute additions in the core book. There's nothing stopping you from playing one of those campaigns that's a bit more like Voyager, that had a bit more of a kind of diverse crew than just the Federation species. Right.
That's very cool. Awesome. And then I want to ask about the Borg Cube.
Yeah. There's a cool story behind the cube, actually. It kind of started off as a joke in the office. We were like, what's the craziest thing we could come up with? And I remember turning around to Gary as our ops manager and was like, we just make a massive cube.
That was you? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it just it could fold out and stuff. And as we were actually talking about the idea that it could have it could fold out, and it's actually the GM screen as well, and you could the original design had in the back you pulled out the back as well, and it was like a door. and it had little shelves which were designed to be looking like the corridors of the Borg, or like the the Enterprise ship or something.
Wow.
That was crazy. But no, we then worked through and actually went, oh, actually we want to make this. And we ended up, I've still got the hand-drawn blueprint. We were trying to kind of, conceive it. And we then worked with a company in Germany, print buyer, to kind of get a prototype done. So they obviously they went out to a printers and went, well, this is what the guys want to make. Can you make something like this? And they came back, and it was more that you pull the GM screen out of it, because originally it was almost like a kind of 2-panel folding door kind of thing. I'm glad we did that in the pulling out the screen in the end, because I think that would have been a nightmare, having to sit your entire cube on the table and have the two-page GM screen,
right,
and then have everything else inside. But the idea really was to just hold all of your books in it. So that is the design principle. Is that the core book goes in that book sleeve underneath, and then you can slot in the command all the way up to the Delta Quadrant source books. That's like 7 books as it is, and then these are the Voyages as well. And as all of those PDFs come with a Borg Cube or a Borg drone purchase.
Oh, nice.
But if you really want to complete the collection, you get the hard copies, and then you stack them all up inside. And then sat in my loft is Borg Cube 0001.
Nice.
It was not exactly a contractual obligation, but I did kind of say to Chris, I came up, we came up with this. I want number 1, and he was like, "Yeah, sure." Okay. And then when it came around to it, I was like, "So I'm having number 1, right? This is happening?" Yeah, I thought so. Okay, cool. No, I didn't bully him into it, but I was like, "Look, I was serious," and he was like, "I know." And I was
Please
like,
tell me you have painted Borg miniatures inside the cube.
I don't have any Borg miniatures
what?
inside it yet, because I haven't opened it.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, I've opened the shrink wrap and checked that it's number 1, but that is literally all I've done with it. It still contains the packing peanuts and all the dice and the book and everything like that.
How much does it weigh?
That's still, it's about 9 kilos, I think.
Wow.
With all the stuff inside.
That's amazing.
But we've been assured by the printers that it can take quite a bit. That's so hence why, if you've got the core book in there, all the books, the supplements should be able to stack up inside. That's what the big space is for in the middle. And then you've got a couple of trays, so you can put your miniatures in if you want to, and also you've got the character sheet pad and the tokens and the dice and stuff like that, so they can go in all the trays. So the idea was for it to obviously have a bit of function, as opposed to just having this massive cube on the on your desk,
right,
somewhere, or in your loft in a box. My plan hopefully is to leave it up there for a few years, then hopefully maybe that's a nest egg or something. I don't know. People pay good money in about 10 years for it, but maybe I'm hoping. But it's about prosperity as well. I want posterity. I want to keep it, and I want to keep it in good condition. So.
That's pretty cool to think that you're the one that thought of the idea, and then now it's here.
It's balmy to think so. Because from being a little kid watching Patrick Stewart diplomatize his way through the galaxy to, going, oh yeah, we should make a massive box and it'd be a Borg Cube. Oh wait, that would be a really good idea. And then it actually happened. It's just crazy.
Well, it's a great thing about being part of this industry. This is it's now a $1.5 billion industry, tabletop gaming. And y'all at Modiphius are doing great work. Between this, the other RPGs, Fallout Wasteland Warfare, which is getting its releases from the Kickstarter out, it's great.
Yeah, pre-order customers are starting to get their stuff now. Retail stores will be very shortly after. Some have some stock already. Mm-hmm. So that's really cool. So the release for that is just, as I kind of say, is gone, just happening now. Mm-hmm. And then, we're not slowing down or stopping.
Good.
We're on this crazy ride together. The Dune RPG got announced recently.
Nice.
It's a massive deal with Battlefront, who are Gale Force 9, and they do those board games, like the Firefly board game and Star Trek Ascendancy board game. Mm-hmm. So they have the tabletop license for that. So basically, there will be quite a few other tabletop products out there over the years that coincide, hopefully, with the film that's getting made with Denis Villeneuve directing. Mm-hmm. and that's all in line with the film in a sense, in terms of timing at least, because they're very early, very early from what I understand. I mean, we don't really hear anything, but from what I understand, they're in very early stages of kind of pre-production. So they're just kind of assembling the team at the moment. So we've had no real coordination with them on that so far. But yeah, we're working a little bit in terms of our pre-development work, kind of concepts and kind of the direction we want to be heading in, kind of soliciting writers and stuff. So we're figuring out our team as well. But that's gonna go crazy over the next couple of years. And then then we've just got a few other things that we haven't quite announced yet that I can't really talk about.
Right, of course. Got to wait till the announcements.
But we have tons coming up. I think a lot of people have a lot of fandoms that are going to be very happy.
That's awesome. Sweet. Well, Sam, thank you so much for joining me. If anyone wants anything from Star Trek Adventures, just tell us at Gigabytes. We should have some miniatures and the rule books and whatnot. And if we don't have it at the store, you can order. Go to gigabytescafe.com/order. You can call the store, message us here on Facebook. Any way you want to, you can get a copy of the game, start playing, and having a good time. But thanks, Sam, for joining us. I appreciate you talking to me. And thanks again. Everyone have a great day. We'll see y'all later throughout the week. I got a live stream tonight at 8. We are talking or painting Night Haunts from Age of Sigmar. So bye, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you very much, John.